I'm doing it here as well, so it's okay. You can.
So I don't need to do it.
No.
So that whole screen went away actually. And now I'm not able to. Okay, it's here. So if you want,
It's
I
here,
can.
right? Can you just move and ensure that you're able to access your this thing?
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah.
The screen.
Yeah, it's fine. It's visible, right?
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry for the delay from my side.
Nope, sir.
Thank you, everyone who's joined so far. Today, we are indeed honored to have Dr. Ananda Subramaniam as our guest speaker for our talk on the GSCP, which is a Green Skills Development Program, and she's going to tell us more about what it is all about. I'm indeed honored to introduce Dr. Anandi, who comes from the Indian Economic Service cadre since 1982 and has worked in various capacities in central as well as state governments. She has a master's degree in economics from Stella Maris in Chennai, and then she went on to do her master's in social policy and planning in the London School of Economics, and further on to do her PhD in the field of demographic economics from the SNDT Women's University, Mumbai. Through her tenure, she has worked with various ministries, Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises, Planning Commission, Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Finance at the center, and as well as a State Planning Commission in Tamil Nadu. Since November 2015 till about July 2019, she was posted in the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, the MOEFCC, and as a principal advisor to the MOEFCC, Dr. Subramaniam has been instrumental in conceptualizing and developing the Green Skills Development Program, GSTP, as it is known in short, with the aim of not only tackling the employment issue, but also combating issues with respect to the environment, forest, and climate change. And this is through the idea of creating a green skilled workforce. She also spearheaded the National Environment Survey, a grid-based resource information and decision support system, which is a new initiative of the ministry to address the data gaps in the environment sector. And after 37 long years of service at the with the government, she has retired in July 2019. And we are happy to note that she's decided to come and settle down in the Nilgiris most likely. And that's how we are able to get in touch with her and have her on this session. Thank you so much for your time today. And we'll have the session run for about 30 to 45 minutes of the talk, followed by Q&A session for 15 to 20 minutes. I would request all participants who are joining to keep their audios and videos muted. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Anandi.
Thank you so much. Anyway, I am settling in Coonoor, so there's no likelihood here. It is a permanent decision. But really, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Because when Samantha asked me about it, I was just wondering what would be my value addition to you, because all of you have been working in this sector and doing a great job in Nilgiris. So I was just a little concerned as to how I would add value to whatever you're doing. And what I thought was I'll share my experience when I was working in the ministry. So basically, as you know, I've worked in all the economic ministries, and it was really hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead. Yes.
Okay. So it was my good fortune that I was posted in the MOEFCC, and I was given the task initially of evaluating all the schemes of the ministry. So I had to tour a lot just to see how the schemes were working at the ground level. And after basically listening to people, because it was all new to me, and when I met all these people who were working, the scientists, the experts, as well as the grassroots level people who were working, I realized that there were some gaps which were there and which probably the ministry could do something. I mean, there were a lot of issues, but where the government can come in, that was my concern. So that is how I identified two major gaps, which were the skill gaps and the data gaps. And so this is how I just brought up this concept of Green Skill Development Program, which was, it was absolutely new. It has never been done at the government level. I mean, various NGOs are doing skilling and all that. But at the government level, this is the first time at the center. And for the data gaps, the National Environment Survey is something that I also initiated, which is currently, it will probably take off next year. So this is the thing that I went in as an economist, but I retired as an econologist, bringing in the ecology part of it to my economics. So I'll just start this presentation. It is a very simple thing. I don't want to take you through because you already know a lot about environment. It's nothing, but just to set the background, a brief on the environment sector and the concerns, and focus on GSDP. And then I would love to have questions and we can have discussions on that. So as you know, we had the World Environment Day 3 weeks back, and it is very critical at this stage because especially at this time of COVID, I don't know who thought about it with what vision, but it has been a very apt theme. Basically to provide momentum, the focus is to provide momentum for raising public awareness on environment. And that's where I think this GSDP also is very critical, because it raises public awareness and also skills people. So this is something that it would really be appropriate for this year. And I think the rest of it, like, you know, the decline in species populations and degradation of habitat, all of you know, it is nothing that I am bringing out new. So I would not really get into all those things. All these are known facts. So after COVID, I mean, this is, I think it is very critical that COVID has really opened our eyes, in the sense as it's actually a wake-up call, I would say. And it has helped us to appreciate not only the beauty, but also the importance and criticality of nature. It has brought out the interdependence of different sectors and people, and basically also raising the fact that, or flagging the issue that environmental concerns cuts across all sectors, all economic sectors you have, whether it's agriculture, you know, irrigation, or tourism, or trade, or industry, anything you name it, environmental concerns are very much there. It's right in the center. So what it has done, COVID has helped us in some ways, is that it has helped us to, it has actually made the invisible visible now. You know, like, we were really, a lot of us, we were really blind to many things, including the migrant laborers. I mean, we considered them, they were all in the fringes of the society. We didn't really care how they lived, how they, as a society, I think, even though individually or as groups we have worked with them, but as a society, they were largely invisible. Similarly, even environment. I mean, I don't think the way COVID-19 has brought out these factors and issues in front of us, it has just thrown it in our face. And I think this is something that we really need to act on right now. And this is where our duties and responsibilities as a citizen also comes into focus. And I think during this time, many individuals have also responded, and apart from groups, as citizens to, to the COVID-19. But unfortunately, as humans, we are very myopic. We have a short-term vision, like, we tend to forget. I hope that doesn't happen. And I hope, instead of having these, World Environment Day, which is another symbolic, we have so many days, there are World Turtle Day, we have the World Oceans Day, all kinds of days, but we have kind of, it's been more symbolic. That I just hope that now with this, we really put all our plans into action and take serious charge of what's happening around us. And at the same time, adopt a humane approach to all living beings, including, of course, nature. Legal backing, all of you know constitutionally how environment is kind of it is enshrined in the constitution. Even the panchayats are empowered. There are several acts that guide. So I'm not getting into all those things. You're all well aware of those things. But basically, all this was to achieve major goals, various goals of not only protection, conservation of, and management of the environment. And here I'm meaning environment, I'm including the entire forest, wildlife, climate change. It's one comprehensive word, which is environment. And enhancement of human well-being, all these things, these were the broad objectives. But however, we have the constitutional backing, we have so many things laid out, but still, as per the National Wildlife Action Plan in 2016, it says there's an alarming erosion of our natural heritage. So this is a very, very disquieting statement. I mean, the fact that in 2016 also, we have, even though for ages we've been talking about it, we've been having meetings after meetings, so much of action, but still we have not, it's still in a state where we have not done enough. So that is the state we are in right now. And so the concerns which all of you, of course, there would be more, I've just listed a few. And I basically, this is my opinion. You're welcome to discuss this. But I feel we have failed because we have adopted a totally human-centric approach. Everything is about us. And we have used all our resources, and we have caused biodiversity and ecosystems to, I mean, everything, wherever you look, there's, whether it's emissions from the industry, then the discharge of waste, human wildlife conflict. Why does it come? I mean, because we have actually encroached on the land of, we have, the forest degradation has happened, and most of this forest, they have agricultural activities on the borders. So naturally, when their habitat is degraded, they move out of their habitat. It is very natural. So I think it is invariably what happens is the wildlife is the one which gets killed. Humans get killed, I'm not denying it, but the sympathy is more towards the humans than towards the wildlife, and not realizing or not willing to admit that the cause of this is because of, we have caused it. So if we take care of their habitat, I think we can resolve these issues to a large extent, apart from other requirements which are there. Similarly, forest fires. And basically the argument is that it's always been at the government level, it's development versus environment, invariably. Because what you try to do is, in the name of development, you say, you cut these trees, you want to lay a road, cutting across, in fact, protected areas. They are deemed protected, but then you do lay roads. And because of that, you cut trees. And what you say is that, instead of, when you cut so many trees, you just plant so many saplings, X times the saplings in another place, which is not, absolutely, in my opinion, it is not correct. Basically, because a tree, if you cut, it has an entire ecosystem. I think all of you know all these things, so I don't have to say it. But when I was working, I was pretty passionate about it, and I tried to reason out, but it didn't work. That when you cut a tree, you actually wreck the entire ecosystem, the entire thing, whatever is there around it, below it, above it, you are wrecking it. And how is that equivalent to planting a sapling, which will take decades to reach that kind of a ecosystem? So this is something that we have not really understood and probably it would be appropriate if we can develop awareness, public awareness. That is why having worked in the government, I feel it is the public who have a greater say in what the environment should be. And everywhere we've had, not getting into a activist kind of a thing, but definitely try to come up with solutions. That is what the government is looking for. I think that is what I could, instead of activism, if we could come up with solutions as to how we can do it, have a development, but within the, in sync with the environment. That is what is very critical. And apart from that, we also have the concerns of lack of livelihood options for school dropouts. There's a rural-urban gap in opportunities, which is why the migrant labor, moves from the rural to the urban areas. There's also a dying traditional knowledge of arts, crafts, medicine, all that. So these are broad concerns which I could recognize during my tenure, and there are more, but I just thought we can have discussions on them. So if we have these, they're all due to anthropogenic actions, then what are our solutions? We have to provide the solutions. So everywhere, whether it's the first Earth Summit, which was more than 3 decades back, then you have the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, everyone has said that it is human activities that have caused immense damage, specifically in the last 50 years of the 20th century. It all started then. And of course, it's still continuing. But which means basically it is my generation. I would put it that way, that during my generation is when this entire damage happened. So I think it is important to, and I would be frank that when I was growing up, these things were never taught in schools and colleges. It was, environment was not even, a topic of, especially in anything. We didn't even discuss about water issues or air or pollution or nothing. It was not there. So obviously, and the action, what was done was in the name of development. I mean, we really did do a lot of damage because, and that is having its effect now. Whatever was done more than 50 years back is having its impact now. So we have to be really careful as how. Yeah, can I go on?
Yes, please. Sorry, I think. Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah, so of course, solutions, I'm not getting into, I'm focusing on a solution to be proactive and preventative. That is my, that's a focus of my presentation. So where you need preemptive efforts, not only at the government level, but also through complementary action at the ground, through public awareness and public participation. So that's where this and skill is important, because people don't have the skill sets. If you see waste being generated, you really don't know what to do with that waste. You don't know, even now we don't know what to do with our e-waste. We don't know. So the awareness, what to do about it is something that if we can skill them and make them aware, it makes it easier to manage the environmental issues. So that's how the GSDP came about. And basically it's not only that skill sets, there's a huge demand. That's what I found out during my tours, that there is not only a skill gap, there's also a demand for those such skilled workforce. So at the same time, we have a demographic dividend with high dropouts rate, because I have the education ministry has clearly said that more than 30% of youth, they drop out of school at the secondary itself. So this is something that we have huge youth manpower who are not skilled, not educated, and so they're just doing inane, mundane work. Instead, if we can skill them in this sector, it would really help, be beneficial for them as well as for the country. So this is how it came up, and it was launched on June 4th, 2017. Oops, sorry. So I would just mention now I just focus on this part of the presentation, which is on the Green Skill Development Program. It is a very unique program because it's a very flexible program. Having worked in the government, I know how curtailing these schemes can be, how because they kind of either curtail you on the budgets or whatever you can do. They're really very restricted, right? And therefore, at the implementation stage, many of our good schemes also fail. So this particular program is such that we provide free skilling, all the boarding, lodging, training kits, everything is given. For the tribals, we provide a stipend. I'm sorry, I'm still talking in present tense, but it is, the scheme is providing for it. There is no age bar. So the minimum age is 18, because if you have to be employed, you have to be 18. And there is no restriction on the age, upper age limit. Educational qualification, we said even dropouts, they should be able to be skilled and to enhance their employability. And the focus is on more than 60% of the training should be on-field training, that is practical training. So they have to necessarily, get their hands dirty and do all the work so that they understand what needs to be done. That is the skill. And this was really appreciated in the pilot when we did this. When I went and met the students, because I normally tend to, I met all the youth who were trained, and I went for the validatory function because I thought that would be a better way to assess what were the requirements, whether the program or the course, whatever they undertook, whether it met their needs and all that. And what was striking was in cases like, we had 55-year-old men, women who were taking a, say, a waste management course I met them in the Department of Zoology in Anna University here, where they were doing the waste management course. And it was very, very, exciting to meet them, because they said, we will now take it forward. We can skill people also. And at the same time, we will do whatever we can to improve in our neighborhood, in our societies, to spread this awareness and knowledge around. Similarly, for the dropouts, in fact, there was apprehension among the scientists who were teaching them that probably the dropouts will not be able to understand, especially in the case like a biodiversity course and all that, the technical names, and it may be difficult for them. So what I told them was, just give it a try. Let's see. It's a pilot. Let's give it a try. And anyway, the selection was to be done by them. I said, if you find them intelligent enough, because dropouts is not necessarily because they're not learning, or they could not, they're incapable of understanding. It's probably because of family issues or maybe monetary issues that they had to drop out. So let's give those children a chance. So, and it was amazing that when I went in Pune, it was in BSI and ZSI, that you had class 10 dropout top the class, with graduates around. And it was amazing to see their enthusiasm, and where even the graduates who were there, and the postgraduates were also there, and they said, this is something, this kind of hands-on training is something that we have not learned even in our college. So they were very thrilled with it, and we got a very positive response, of course. That is for the pilot. But the feature is that that's why this was very, very critical, and it came out that this is a very good thing to continue. And we also facilitate that each center had a placement cell, so through that they were facilitated, and on the completion of the course, a certificate was given by the MOFCC with the level of skilling acquired. At the same time, there were no set targets or budgets for the centers, because we said each center is placed in a different city or a rural area, or in the northeast or a hilly, or it depends on where they are placed. So we did not cap anything. We did not say that okay, this is the budget, which normally happens, as you all may be knowing, in government. Generally each program is given like 10 lakhs, 15 lakhs, and that's the thing. You have to adjust everything according to that. So instead of that, we said, no, we will adjust to your needs. So whatever, even if a program was running in the northeast and say in a plain area, in a hilly area, in a plain, their budgets would be different, even though they're running the same course. So that was how it was done. And most of the training modules had a component on computer and GIS, training. They could take up any courses, their centers, depending on their capability. And all the skills were actually, we had to comply with the NSDA, that's a National Skill Development Agency. So we were in sync with the ministry, so that we had a level of skilling for each of them, and it was mentioned in their certificate. The training modules were developed by all the experts. It was not done by the ministry. We asked the experts who were there on the ground, who were going to undertake the course, training. They had to develop their modules, and each module we said it can be flexible to suit your local needs. For instance, if you have studying biodiversity, it will be different in each area. If you're taking up any in the desert area or in a marine area, it's going to be different. The coastal area, it's going to be different. And similarly, for ecotourism, there's a course on ecotourism, and there also we said, okay, if it's going to be in a place like Sikkim, it's going to be different as compared to another place, say in Odisha. So it's a very flexible course, and it's amenable to whatever the requirements is there. So the participating institutes were like, we had a nationwide network of 32 NVIS. The NVIS is a scheme which runs in the ministry. So, and we have a huge network, which this scheme has been running since '82. And basically it was just an environmental system, but I expanded it so that they start doing other things, because with Google and the internet exploding like this, there's no need for everything is available on the net. But to improve their, because they were all working in the state and in different capacities in the, in the NGOs, universities and all that. So we said, I mean, it's important to tap their expertise. So that's how this scheme evolved. We said, okay, you are say working in Terry, for instance. So they developed modules on solar, training or skilling. So, and similarly, we had on BSI ZSI, they did it on biodiversity. So we had a whole range of the, such programs, such courses could be developed because of the expertise which was already there in this system, as well as in the autonomous institutions, statutory bodies and all that, all those offices which were under the MOEF itself. So there's a huge network which the ministry has, which was not tapped at all. So all of this, all their expertise was tapped to have these courses. And in addition to that, there were other, out of these, there were other institutes who wanted to join with us. They were like the Amrita University in Coimbatore. And then you had NEERI in Nagpur and one more in Haryana. So they said, we will also like to do on this. So we took them along and they were as the GSDP partners. This was during the second stage. In the pilot stage, it was restricted to the ministry's, basically it was BSI ZSI which did it. No other institute did it. After that, in the second phase, we had the whole range. They were, I'll come to the numbers later, but this was the broad. So then after the pilot, as I said, was extremely successful, and we extended it in 1819 to all states, including Andaman, Nicobar and Lakshadweep. We had more than 87 such centers who partnered to conduct 44 diverse courses, and their hours varied from 80 hours to 550 hours. So 80 hours is the minimum that NSDA said that we should do, because they said anything lower than that, it's difficult. We'll have to go through a process. So we said, we agreed to that and we stuck to 80 hours. The broad areas were biodiversity conservation, environment protection, and the forest sector. And the aim was that understanding that the scientists or experts working in that area, they did not have the time or energy to skill so many batches. So we said, why don't you try to skill master trainers in your first batch who can go on to skill further batches. So then you can expand your, the courses as well as the number of people being trained during any year. So this is a select, there were, as I said, more than 44 courses. This is a select, about 18 courses I have listed out. Keeping in view mind that this is very relevant to Nilgiris also. So I think, we can really develop on these kind of things. And if anybody is interested, I think this is something that you can really take up in Nilgiris and get the funding for this from the ministry. So it had a pan-India coverage. And so what are the outcomes of GSDP? What that is the long-term one, we want to create a green skilled workforce, a green workforce, because they will work in the environment sector needs such people. So this would enhance their employability. It would enhance their livelihood options also, because it would be local. You don't really have to migrate to cities. You at the local area itself, you can, when you're skilled enough, and you can start your own ventures or work with other institutions. So your livelihood options really increases, and it helps growth of the rural economy that way. The One Health approach to tackle issues at the human-animal environment interface. Attitudinal changes in people. Now, this is something that is very critical, which we found. I will list out some success stories to you. And where we found that by skilling, they have been able to, one person when is skilled, that person goes back to their society or community, and they've been able to change their communities. And that has been a great eye-opener for all of us. And even if we were happy that we were able to do this and be the change, and each person has now become a change. That has been great. So ultimately, it will help us reduce our whatever concerns we had mentioned earlier. It should help us reduce all that. So I will just come up to the success stories, which we have a brief thing. So it has attracted youth, older generation, women, tribals. So about 25% of the participants were tribals and more than 40% were women. Almost 100% completion rate, each one of them, except for genuine medical problems or some family issues, they one or two dropped out, but otherwise they completed the course. And this more than 40% were placed. This was for the 18-19. So I don't know the latest. I have retired, so I don't know the latest now. But another thing which is very interesting is that apart from when I had toured, and I had met all these scientists, especially in BSI, ZSI, they said that these days the youth who are, they are really not interested in pure science. For instance, going in for botany or biology or zoology, purely they are not interested because there are no options, employment options for them. So what is this? This has really triggered many youths when they came in for this course, when they did this course on parataxonomy and PBR, which was there, they got so interested in it, and many of them have gone on to do further study. They've gone on to do PhDs in that area. So what we are going to get is, after some time, we are going to get back taxonomists in our country, which, as you may be knowing, there's a huge shortage. We don't have taxonomists. We don't have in taxidermy. In fact, I wanted to start a course on taxidermy also, but we were still developing the module when I had to retire. But I just hope it also takes place, because that is something which is again missing. For a future, kids who go into any these museums and all that, if you have a taxidermist who is skilled, you can develop these whatever we are seeing in museums, in various natural history museums. So this is something that I feel that youth have now understood. They find it that this is a window to more opportunities, and which they didn't realize when they were studying in college, that this is the scope of this topic. So they have really, this has really opened up many fields for them. And it has also facilitated in community mobilization in tribal groups, wherever it has been developed. And I will list them out later, but with the Irula tribes here in Siruvani near Coimbatore, even in Nilgiris with the Kurumba and Kota tribes, we have there's been a GSDP program. And so this it has really enabled youth to explore career options, because I remember once there's a course on management of small botanical gardens. The idea was that every district or every panchayat even can have small botanical gardens, so that in a local area, their population can understand what are the locally aware, growing things, and what is their importance. Because the youth, they have to be taught in every way. I mean, the traditional knowledge has to be passed on in different ways. So this is one way. So the idea was the management of small botanical gardens, if we can do that. And there was one youth whom I met, and he said his father was asking him to, as usual, join medicine or engineering or something else. And he said he wanted to do this course. He said, let me do this course. It was, I don't recall the number of hours, but there's definitely a week or 2 weeks, it's a course. And after doing this course, when I met them at the valedictory, he said, I am now getting into, I want to do agricultural, I want to study agriculture, so I will definitely go in for that. This has triggered interest in agriculture. So you can imagine, we really don't know how it shapes out, and each individual reacts differently to whatever is being taught. So this was really, really an eye-opener for me as well. And so it has changed my mindsets and lives. I will just give you some things, if you can see it. I hope you can see what is there. This was on ecotourism, where this was in Sikkim, where this person has already started a homestay, and he's having guests coming in at his homestay. And the thing was that anybody from any part of the country can go and participate in the course. That is the whole beauty of it. So there was some person from Mysore who went, and he is now promoting ecotourism packages throughout the country. So it has opened up various options for people. Similarly, you had, in the case of parataxonomy, you had various multiple options available. Many options was that you can become a master trainer. There were teachers who then went on to teach their students about this. So then you had a project biologist, a project. So I mean, it's a huge, because you need these people at every level in the biodiversity sector. So here, Mr. Chandra Prakash, I remember that he was a nature guide and environmentalist, where he went on to, create an awareness within his own community, wherever he been. All of them have done this. Similarly, now you can see this is one lady who was turned successful entrepreneur, and she's established her own nursery and herbal garden in Chennai. And similarly, now she has been, another girl has been selected by the Chhattisgarh State Biodiversity Board for preparing the PBR, the People's Biodiversity Register. So then in another case, this person has, Lalit Pathak, he's actually formed a block level BMC because of this course. It's helped him to form a BMC. So it has, the way it has, impacted is really amazing. Then in the case of this course, which is the plantation techniques of renewable energy in an arid zone, this happened in Jodhpur. So we had Kazri, which is there, they have it. So how they have learned and how they are spreading it in their own communities is something that it is unique. And this is what each one has taken back from the course. And that, I think, if you can educate one person or skill one person, make them aware, you cannot even imagine the impact. It will have a multiplier effect. This is the one in Coimbatore with the Irula tribes, where the mostly women are engaged here. They have been trained in, we have, most of you must be knowing, you have the invasive species, the lantana, which is there. It is a huge bane. I remember when I went to Bandipur Sanctuary, the Tiger Reserve, the field director told me that more than 70% of Bandipur is covered with lantana. And we had the fire also there. If you recall, recently we had the forest fire, which really ravaged that place. And it is largely due to the presence of such invasive species. So what we did was to find out if there's a possibility of using lantana to skill people. I mean, do something out of it. So it's a win-win for both. The forest department gets rid of lantana, and the forests are rid of lantana rather, and we also make it a livelihood option for the tribe. So this is what has come out, and it is a beautiful furniture which they make. It looks so similar to bamboo, very sturdy, and it is something that it is if I'm not mistaken, I think the person who is training, she is actually enabled them to sell it on Amazon also. That was what I heard. I mean, that was the thing, last year, and I don't know if it's still there. But this was the reach, and there were a lot of demand for such products. So I think such kind of things, if we can do it, it's a win-win for this whole program is like that, based on such ideas. Then you had another course like bird identification, bird migration. And so I tell you, this is something where they are taught not only about bird, that is, there are two courses here. One is you have the basic ornithology, and the other one is where they teach them how to study the migration, aspects of birds. Which I went to Point Calumet, and amazing the way it is taught by all these scientists. And this was taught by in Point Calumet by the BNHS scientists. And it is amazing how the students have learned how to capture the birds without harming them, and how to ring them. So I've seen that entire process, and it's amazing how it is we can really develop such kind of knowledge among students, and how we can develop such enthusiasm. And in fact, the BNHS director, he told me that there was one person who was absolutely a dropout, who did not know anything, and now that person is earning 50,000 a month, and he's employed by the BNHS. So it's something which is really fascinating, success which is there. Again, another one which is very unique is the river dolphin conservation, which the ZSI in Patna has done it. And where you have so many students. See, all this equipment, whatever you're seeing, all this is provided under the program. The students don't have to do a single thing. They just have to attend class and that's it. And they have been placed in various institutions which are, doing research on river dolphins in the State Pollution Control Board of Bihar in Patna, because they are studying the impact of pollution on dolphins, and also all these people are being employed there. So this is a huge area. This is what I'm saying about the Kurumba. Kurumba, the paintings, the traditional knowledge, which is again getting lost. So we had a course in about 50 trainees. There were the couple of the master trainers were the tribals themselves. The artists who were a couple of them who were really good in doing this. They were given the task of being the master trainers, and they were employed as master trainers. So they also earned under the scheme. They under the program they earned as master trainers, and they taught all these people. And they came out with beautiful drawings, and which these paintings were, giving us local stories, and it was so beautifully, captured in paint form. It was really beautiful to see. And this was the Kota, where you had the pottery, and this lady you see on the left, she was actually the master trainer with all these women. And it was these two courses in Nilgiris was undertaken by the Envy Center in CPREC. So they undertook this, and we had a whole range of pottery, which we suggested ways that how it can be marketed and how it can be expanded. And another course is waste management, STP, ETP, and all this is also being done. There was this, as I said, an attitudinal change it has brought over. There was this housewife who came to attend, and it appears that her husband was doing this waste management and wherever he was running a company or whatever. And she was very upset that her husband was doing that. So she wanted to understand, but it was nice of her to, good of her. She was smart enough to come to a course because it was free also. So she thought, why not, kind of understand what's going on. And that changed her mindset. And now she has joined her husband and she's actually guiding him in waste management techniques. So you can see how this is really developed. Similarly, in the ETP, STP, they've got so many candidates. And this was started off largely in Gujarat, where we had our center there. So this is something that we find that in every course, in whichever course you take it, they've really done great. Bamboo crafts, again, in fact, they in FRI in Dehradun, they have already created, they've started a self-help group, and they've, sort of, with their having a bank account, and so that whatever they make, then now they can start earning under that. Similarly, this person has started establishing he has established a training center himself, and he has started training other people. So there's a lot of options, whatever is there. Nature interpretation, this person, he had a good, in fact, this is a case where this person had a qualification. He was very well educated. He could get into a secure government job. But once he attended this course, he turned around and he started cultivating in his ancestral land. So you can see how it motivates people in different ways. This person has started his own travel agency. So there are various such examples, and I can just go on, but I'll stop here. There was another course which was started, that is where these were all individual courses running separately. So I thought that why not bring some courses together in one place. So as you know, rivers are polluted everywhere, and you've all done I think we have the Clean Kunnur here, which has done a great job in cleaning up Kunnur River. Everywhere I went, this was the situation. Even in Dehradun or Ganga, Yamuna, we know. Everywhere you went, it was the same story. And that was what was very disheartening. That we actually worship the rivers, and we have seen civilizations flourish on these river sides, river banks. But now we have, sort of removed ourselves from there, and we have just left the river to its own destiny. So that is something that I thought, why not start that? And we had very willing centers in Patna. That is why this Patna was chosen. Because we had the State Pollution Control Board, where he was led by a dynamic chairman, and we had our center in Adri, Patna, who was willing to take up this and network with a lot of people, including ZSI Patna. So we said, okay, why don't you target many courses? So you have pollution, water pollution, solid waste management, water quality, waste management, biodiversity assessment, dolphin conservation, cleaner production, everything. We'll have a comprehensive course, and let's have that in one place. There could be different everybody may not be interested in the same course, but in one place we can skill many youth in different areas. So the idea was that if we can target it to say within 10 kilometers of, they chose Patna to Danapur, which is, and we said, okay, I think it is for 200 kilometers. So we said, okay, if you can skill, within the 10-kilometer on either bank, and then skill the youth in those areas, then you will develop a skilled workforce to take care of River Ganga in that area. So that was the whole idea. And they will also get, with the State Pollution Control Board in the picture, with the collector, with the municipal corporate, everybody was involved. So they also got skilled workforce to manage all the issues. So it is a great start, and we've got a good response. Again, I will just dwell, I don't know whether you can read this, but I will read it out. The outcomes of this river life management system is, there's one person who's working with the National Geographic team in Botswana. Then another one is working with WWF on the riverine ecosystem. And then you have another person installing STPs in different parts of India. And they're working as lab technicians, the Central Institute of Mining, and then in tourism. So you have had a great in aquaculture management. So this a short program, I mean, which again, this was started as a pilot, and it has had immense. There's some more, but I didn't want to, get into that too much of a detail. But this is a broad this thing where they are doing. They're working with even the Tiger Reserve and all that. So this is something where a small program has had immense impact in the local level. So the idea is, if again master trainers come out of this, then they can go on to skill further people in the entire Ganges part of, take Bihar, part of wherever Bihar, wherever there is a problem of pollution and wherever Ganga is affected, let's have such skilling programs there, and let's have master trainers to skill them. So once this is done, there were many of them who were interested in doing it, in Andhra, in Telangana. They said we'll do it for in our in rivers, and then we had it in Bhopal also for Narmada, in Gujarat. Everywhere, everybody was interested in taking it up. So this is something that can be done, where skilling programs can be undertaken, and youth can be skilled to then have a sustainable management. Because otherwise, now what is happening is we take it up as a project, NGO may do it, but then sustainability is a factor. Now that if you can have skilled workforce, this is possible. So for Nilgiris, as I said, we have done this Kurumba, Kota paintings, all that has been done. And what has been planned by CPREC for this year, the NBIS Center, is they want to do on managing and controlling forest fire, organic farming and nursery raising, as well as waste management. Okay, so PBR is something, as you know, it is very critical. In Tamil Nadu, they have set up 383 block level BMCs. I am sure I'm not aware of Nilgiris, how the status is, but there would be of immense use in preparing the PBR. So because it is a very specialized document, if you've seen the PBR document, it's very specialized. So skilling is specifically given on how to fill in those things and how to prepare a PBR document. So the entire thing has been done. And so this course can be taken up. Then you have the NTFP, that is non-timber forest produce. That is the plant origin as well as the animal origin. In the plant origin, you have the lantana, as I said. Then we also have coconut fiber, those products, bamboo products, medicinal plants. These are possible. You can have skilling programs on these. Animal origin is wild beekeeping, which is happening in Assam. It's happening in Arunachal and other parts as well, Dehradun. And this is something that can be taken up here as well. Then you have waste management. Of course, waste management, as I see it, is post facto, after the waste is actually generated. Whereas the other course which we are doing is on cleaner production of waste minimization, which is preventative. As I said, our focus is more on preventative solutions. So this is very important. And in fact, this cleaner production and waste management module we have introduced, we have made it mandatory. When I left, I had made it mandatory for all the courses, because this is something, it is very critical. Whether you're in the any sector, whoever you are, you should know that whether whether you need to generate some amount of waste, whether you can minimize it. If you minimize the waste generation, your management is automatically manageable. So that is something which is very critical. And post COVID, I think plastic management is going to be very critical. So we can have a specialized course in plastic management. You can call the Tyagaraja College of Engineering to help us out in that. And again, soil, water pollution, all that, water budgeting, auditing. Again, this is very critical, because water is going to be a major problem as in future. And we do have falling groundwater levels everywhere, because of which desertification is happening. Though Nilgiris is blessed that way, but it is not something that we can take for granted. So I think this is something that if we start now itself, of people to understand that we should not waste water, we should manage it. And if we do an auditing at each household and industry level, it will really help us in the future. Again, bird identification, it definitely migration techniques, they can be targeted. Any other targeted program like the river life management or coastal life management, that is another thing which I had wanted, which is also there, where of course coastal life is not relevant to Nilgiris, but we can have any such course which you feel there's a need for a comprehensive targeted approach for something, that can easily be done. So thanks a lot for your patient hearing. I hope I have not taken too much of your time. And this is the website, you can go and see. And if any other queries, I'm here to, it's welcome. And I can direct you to the ministry, or I can suggest some things, if whatever.
Thank you, Dr. Anandi, for that very informative session on the GSDP. I think it was of immense help, at least for me personally. We have time to take a few questions. So if anyone has a question, you may raise your hand in the chat bar. We can unmute you, or you can type the question in the chat box and we can spell it out for you. Thank you.
Should I stop the sharing?
Yes, the screen can be shared. Screen sharing can be stopped, yes.
So looks like there are no questions, or?
Yeah. Is there any questions? Anybody would like to?
Yeah, hi. I can ask a question. My name is Anita Verghese.
Yeah.
I work at Keystone Foundation.
Okay.
Dr. Anandi, very nice. I listened to your whole talk. So from the Nilgiris, could we approach you, and would you be open to helping us identify? I mean, we would identify, people, youngsters who could, take the benefit of such a course. Would you be able to help us out in, whatever?
Yeah, sure. I
mean, yeah, in terms of, if we need a reference or what kind of courses we can.
It's a very, we have the list of 44 courses right now. which, if I'm not mistaken, most of them have the NSDA, it's been vetted, so they have a skill level and it's no problem. So if you want any of those courses, you can directly apply. There's no issue at all. You can just, but I can guide you as to what you can, as regards how to put it together, or, anything you want some help, I can certainly help you. That's not a problem at all. And yeah, no issues. You can definitely welcome.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. That would help. And I think not only for me, I'm sure there are other people in the group, where there's naturalists, where there's, citizen scientists. There are certain activities that I know several people here in this group undertake.
Yeah.
So I think your response is for everyone also.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your talk.
Yeah.
We have a question from Sumit Chowdhury. Sumit, yes, you're on. If you want to ask.
Hello, Dr. Anandi. Thank you for this presentation. I just want to know that you have mentioned that these courses are, affiliated with the NSDA or NSDC. So they have some sort of, NSQF level. So just want to know, means, in order to mobilize the marginalized society of our community. So what are the level of these courses? Means, is it 1 to 4 or it is above 4?
It's above 4.
Is it above 4?
Yes.
So yeah, so it is in the category of specialist type of courses.
In fact, we skill them. In fact, it started with 4, and it's, I think, going up to even 7, where we have master trainers who can do whatever, like take on further training. They are, if I'm not mistaken, 7 also. So this is something that, in fact, we were planning. I was planning to have courses below that also, especially because you have these specialists and you want people to help them also. So, but I think that probably because of this, this year, nothing much could be done. Maybe next year they will start that.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, I have one more question. Yeah. So is there anything that you are doing for increase the women participation in these courses? Means, is there any gender, angle in these courses?
Yeah, there is no specific gender angle because we said it is open to all, but we found a lot of our participants were women. As I said, more than 40% were women. And the idea, in some cases, in fact, in certain rural areas, the centers took extra care, and they really went out and actually met the women, because in those areas, women did not come out. They did not even, their thing was that without a male escort, they don't even go out of their homes. So those women also attended this course. So they really took a lot of, spent time with the families to tell them about the course, and then draw out the women to come and attend the course. So that has also been done. That way, a specific sort of intervention was undertaken by the centers. But the scheme as such, we are not reserving any seats and all that. That is not being done.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Anandi. The next question is from Anurag. And Anurag, yes, we should be able to. Anurag, are you on? Okay, Anurag's question was, how do you apply for the course?
Yeah. So if you're interested in any course, in any center, you first I can identify it. It's an online application form. It is on the GSDP portal. So whatever requirement, it's a simple form which is there. Not much is asked. Basically, your interest and why you're wanting to do, and your some small particular details, your basic details. So if you fill up that form and you can suggest which center you want, you select or prioritize, like giving a list of you want to attend this course. If it's running in 2-3 centers, then you can list that this is your first, second, third choice, so that they will accordingly. It will go to the centers directly. The ministry does not actually get into the picture at all. The entire selection is done by the centers, and when you apply, it goes into the centers. You directly apply to them, and then they will call you for either they have a okay, that's fine. But you can hear, right? I hope you're Yes, okay. So you can apply directly there. You can even go to their website, and in that Invest thing you can apply, and they will be they have their own selection criteria. There may be an exam, or there may be an interview, or whatever. We have left it to the centers. It is the ministry has no say in any of these selections. It is up to the center to have a they have a screening committee with experts, and they form their own screening committee, and they have their own ways of selections. So they do it, but everything is transparent, because we know in these days of RTI and all, we have told them to be very careful and have a transparent thing, and not, and if a particular person is not selected, then they should know why all that is there. So you can apply online. There's no issue at all.
Thank you, Dr. Anandi, for that clarification. There is a question from Lima Rosalind, who seems to have dropped off. So her question was, how can one associate and run some of these courses? But I don't see her. I think she dropped off. The connection must have been poor.
Oh,
Would you like to take it, or?
Yeah. So how do you to take on the courses?
How do you associate and run some of these courses?
Yeah.
That was
So
the
what
question.
you can do is, if you have, because what normally happens is, if you're interested in undertaking any course, then what happens is, you can write to the ministry. Okay, tell them that you are this kind of a center, you are working on in this area, and you have the capability, because you need to have the capacity to run a course, either as a as not maybe residential or non-residential. That depends on you, because many of the courses were residential, in the sense that even if they didn't have the say hostel facilities, we said you can rent nearby hotels or something, so that they are put up there and they can come and attend the course. That was what was done in Sikkim and all that. So we can, in many areas actually. So what we did in some places, what they do is they give a lump sum to the trainee, and they say, okay, you take care of yourself. But we don't generally like that, because it's better that we take care of the trainees. And especially in the post-COVID, I think you have to be really careful as to how we do run the residential ones. I hope they would be taking care of all that. So it depends on what you want to do, residential, non-residential, you can mention that. And whatever your capacity is, if you can train 10 people, 20 people, whatever. I mean, you have a classroom, you have a certain, those chairs, tables, desks, and whatever things you have ready for so that students can come and attend the class. And you also have the facility to take them out, in the sense that you have, depending on the course, if it's a waste management course, you'll take them out to industries. And in fact, in the case of which course I've forgotten, but we even gave them, I think they traveled from Dehradun to Gujarat for the for the cleaner production course or something. So we gave even the train fare was covered in the course. So it is very flexible, as I said. It depends on what your needs are and what your capabilities are. So we can, if you want some further thing, we can always discuss and take it forward. There's no issue on that.
Thank you, Dr. Anandi. I think Lina was having some internet issues. We will ensure that we pass on the message to her, so she knows she can get in touch for clarification or further progress on this. So there is another question from Anurag, and if in the interest of time, we'll keep this as the last question. Yeah. So he asked if I'll be able to apply on GSTP website itself.
Yeah, you can. You can apply on the website itself.
Okay. Yes, I hope Anurag was having some microphone issues, but I think that answers his question. If that is all, we will close for the day. I would like to first thank Dr. Anandi for taking the time out on a Saturday evening for us, and for giving us this overview of the GSDP. I think it's immensely helpful for a lot of people within Nilgiris, outside, across India, and we hope we can engage more with these programs. I thank all the participants who took the time out on a weekend to join in. And I thank the Keystone Foundation and the Nilgiri National Society for hosting this session. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend and have a great week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. And it's been a great opportunity to, I hope to meet you all personally after this I know COVID-19 eases a bit the situation, and hopefully we can do. I would be able to work with all of you, and you're doing a great job. Congratulations to all of you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.